Hello and welcome back to the Data Privacy Lawyer. It's Funmi speaking. Today we're going to be reviewing some AI terms and it's going to be offered by SoftBank in Japan. Let's go to the top. This is their AI ethics policy. Please note that this document is an unofficial translation and was prepared for reference purpose only. The original release is in Japanese. Okay, so I'm going to see when this was created. Okay, the AI ethics policy shall be enforced from July 12, 2022. So, shall be enforced from July 12, 2022 doesn't necessarily mean that this was last reviewed July 12, 2022. The language is quite interesting, but they did say that this has been translated from Japanese. I'm not sure if this means that it was last reviewed or it's enforced. Let's just take it as its literal translation. Enforced meaning that it's still in place right now. And it's been in place since July 12, 2022. Now, this was 3 years ago, which means that I think it would be useful to put a date that it was last either updated or reviewed in the event that how AI ethics is conducted at SoftBank has changed in that time. So, SoftBank Corp has consistently contributed to society through the information revolution, etc. Technology should be used only for the happiness of people and should never cause them grief or suffering. And I want to highlight this. I don't think I've ever seen a US organization discuss the fact that technology should be used only for the happiness of people and should never cause them grief or suffering. I'm highlighting this because cultural nuances influence the effort that an organization generally will place on one, the use of artificial intelligence, and two, how personal data is processed in addition to the personal data protection legislation in a specific country. Now, Japan has its own privacy legislation. I don't know if SoftBank operates exclusively in Japan. We can see here that they have a translation into English, which tells me that potentially SoftBank operates on a global scale. Now, the reason this is very important from an insight perspective is because, one, we're looking at an overlap in data protection legislation. There's the APPI in Japan, and then there's all of the host of US privacy legislation. And even though this is an AI ethics policy, artificial intelligence and its use generally will overlap in some capacity with personal data. I like this provision, and something tells me that this is very culturally influenced because I've never seen this on any US AI ethics policy before. We believe that AI has the potential to bring creative destruction to all industries, more widely than any other technology ever created, and to contribute more than ever to realize the human happiness. Again, we've got some insight on human happiness. Now, this doesn't discuss personal data, but I think one thing that's very important to understand as an organization is what is important to your organization from a privacy perspective. The privacy program is generally very broad. Now, let me give you different components of a privacy program. There's the component associated with vendors. There's a component that is related to products and product development. There's a component that's associated with public-facing documents for your customers. And then there's internal documentation that you have to create for your employees that assists the business to continue to run. There's different components to a privacy program. If your organization is very intent on ensuring that there's human happiness, your rollout of your privacy program that's in compliance with the data protection laws may be different to an organization that's more product focused and wants to ensure that their product and how it is conveyed with consumers follows a specific data process flow that is in compliance with the geographies where they operate. So I think that this was a really good example to review because their AI ethics policy is definitely influenced by human happiness. Now, the humans that are involved with the SoftBank, we can see that it's a bank, so there's definitely going to be at least financial data involved. And from a data protection standpoint, processing personal data that is of a financial nature can be considered high risk in some geographies, particularly if there's an overlap with AI. Now, I don't know exactly how SoftBank is using artificial intelligence, but given that they're a bank, there's definitely going to be additional safeguards that they're going to need to put in place, specifically if they operate outside of Japan too. There are definitely a lot of artificial intelligence legislations that are coming out related to different activities that are considered a bit more high risk. and there are obligations that a company like SoftBank would have if financial data is going to be either an input or an output for any artificial intelligence that they decide to use. This policy is intended to comment on AI ethics, but not contradict the following previously established policies. Now we can see here our favorite, the privacy policy, and we can also see the information security policy. Now, one thing a data protection counsel is going to look at is if you are offering provisions in an AI ethics policy and you're referencing the privacy policy, you need to make sure that anything that you put here aligns with what you've put in your privacy policy. You can't have a contradiction. And that's why it's really important for companies like SoftBank to always make sure that they're updating their policies, because I presume that their privacy policy has been updated since July 12, 2022. Now, the reason that's problematic is because in those 3 years, the data protection laws have changed, and they need to be reflected in the privacy policy and how SoftBank, processes personal data. I've just opened the privacy policy because I want to see when this was last updated. Okay. Interesting. This privacy policy has been in effect since April 1st, 2022, and this particular article, the latest revision, was done October 1st, 2023. Now that's very, very interesting to me. We're not going to focus on this. This is an AI review. But essentially, they've updated their privacy policy essentially a year after the AI ethics policy, which could mean one of two things. Nothing has changed with the bank, or there's an update that needs to be done, particularly given that this has been over 2 years for the privacy policy and 3 for the ethics policy. Let's take a look at privacy protection and security assurance. Data is indispensable for the design, development, and use of AI. Now, I've talked about this. My law firm focuses on the data, personal data. But you cannot generally have artificial intelligence in any capacity without at least utilizing whether it's data or personal data. Now, I have seen some AI tools that are being offered that don't necessarily process, the name or email address. Sometimes it's just the IP address and some of those metadatas. But essentially anything that identifies an individual constitutes personal data. So when drafting or creating an AI policy, personal data is definitely something that any organization is going to need to have considerations over. There are laws that dictate how you can use AI and personal data. Without a large amount of accurate data to educate AI, its development and contribution to society cannot be realized. That is why we will appropriately manage and operate various types of data, including personal data, in accordance with internal rules, relevant laws, and regulations. Now, one question I would probably have for SoftBank is, where do you provide your products and services that overlap with artificial intelligence? Because that will influence how you can even, 1, protect the data, and 2, what your obligations are when it comes to utilizing the AI tool in mind. So I think that's really it for this ethics policy. I think it's kind of short. I don't know exactly where the AI is being utilized by SoftBank. We can see here that it's definitely in Japan. So one of the very instrumental data protection laws is going to be the APPI. But if this is a global organization, let's take a look. We might actually be able to identify. We can see here that they've actually listed affiliated companies that apply this AI ethics policy. If any of these are outside of Japan, we can see this one is in Europe and this one's in America. So we automatically know that it's on a global scale at a minimum. I think that there's definitely improvements that need to be made to this AI ethics policy. I don't know what they're doing internally, but just giving it a review to make sure that everything is still intact is very important, at least on an annual basis, depending on what the rollout of the artificial intelligence looks like. Now, I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you are looking for help with drafting an AI ethics policy, or you are looking for how you can comply with the AI legislation, take a look at my description below, and I would love to work with your organization.